Alright. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wa salatu wa salam ala Sayyidina Anbiya wa Mursaleen Nabiyina Muhammad wa ala alihi sahbihi ajma'in. Amma ba'd. So today, inshallah, we're going to talk about the condemnation of miserliness. We had spent a lot of time on being generous the past couple classes. Now he's going to talk about the opposite of that. So before it was about sakha, and now it's about bukhul, right? It's about stinginess, being stingy, being miserly. And he's going to share with us some texts, some nusus that have to do with being stingy and being miserly. From them, he starts out, وَمَنْ يُوقَ شُحَّ نَفْسِهِ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُفْلِحُونَ. Those who are saved from their own soul's greed are truly successful. So it's interesting how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala really summarizes success here with this idea of fighting this internal concept of stinginess and miserliness. Why? Like there's so many other verses we hear about, like taqwa and praying and engaging and doing and being engaged in dhikr. Why this idea of one who protects himself or one who is protected from shuh, from miserliness, is successful? Right? So it's associated with so an individual who's generous, we associate that with a soft heart. Right? Versus somebody who is stingy, we associate that with a hardness in their heart. And part of the way and the means to success, and by success, how are we defining that? Being part of the 1%, right? No, I mean by earning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's pleasure, right? So that's something that's really important. In order for me to earn Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's pleasure, my heart needs to be soft, right? And part of that softness is learning how to be generous in fighting this idea of stinginess, fighting this idea of miserliness. Then the next verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَا يَحْسَبَنَّ الَّذِينَ يَبْخُلُونَ بِمَا آتَاهُمُ اللَّهُ مِنْ فَضْلِهِ هُوَ خَيْرٌ لَهُمْ بَلْ هُوَ شَرٌّ لَهُمْ سَيُطَوِّقُونَ مَا بَخِلُوا بِهِ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ وَلِلَّهِ مِيرَاثُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَاللَّهُ بِمَا تَعْمَلُونَ خَبِيرٌ. That those who are miserly with what Allah has granted them out of His grace should not think that it is good for them. On the contrary, it is bad for them. Whatever they meanly withhold will be hung around their necks on the day of resurrection. It is Allah who will inherit the heavens and earth. Allah is well aware of everything that you do. What do you guys think about this verse? So I think there's a difference between holding on to wealth, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, how does He say it here? So that's an excellent point, right? Firstly, I think it's very important for us to understand that this is actually Allah's wealth, right? And all of it is going to go back to Allah. And what does that make me? Right, just an agent or a tool or a borrower, right? So that's all that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made me, right? He hasn't made me any more than that. Like I'm just a tool that is utilizing these and channeling these funds to wherever it is that they need to go. So that fact that it is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone is something that is hugely important. And that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says that He doesn't say those people who hold their wealth. He said those people who are what? Miserly with it. Right? So what's the difference between holding wealth and being miserly with wealth? Right? Not wanting to give, right? So if I'm holding my wealth, I could be holding it for a reason, right? There are different reasons I'm holding on to that wealth. There are certain reasons that I'm using this wealth, you know what I mean? Or there's certain reasons that I'm investing it, which is a different type of holding, right? So if I invest that money, I'm still holding it. But when and where does that become a problem? This is something that we've touched on. Yeah, right? When I don't want to give, right? When I don't want to give, right? This is where it becomes a huge problem. This is where it becomes a huge issue, that I'm holding on so adamantly to this wealth. Now it becomes more difficult for me to give and to engage. And the reason for that, why am I not giving? Because my heart is where? Right? My heart is attached to wealth when it should be attached to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? And this is where it becomes an issue. This is where it becomes a problem. On wealth should always be in our hands, not in our hearts. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, He should not think that is good for them. On the contrary, it is bad for them. So this money that they're being stingy with and that they have with them, why is it bad for them? It's going to be held against them. right? So they think they have this money and they think they have this wealth, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed them and all of this. But at the end of the day, it's actually going to be a witness against them. Why? Right, because they're misusing it. And what did we say in the first? By Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ascribing this wealth to himself and saying that this is mine and that we're just agents, what is he basically saying? That you were a what? Like you failed in your agency. Ahsant. Ahsant. Right? You failed your agency. You were supposed to be my agent. I'm giving you this wealth because you're my agent and you're supposed to use it how? In a good way. Right? You're supposed to be using this in a good way, but you used it in a bad way. Use it in an evil way. So because you use it in this evil way, it's not going to be a witness for you. It's actually going to be a witness against you. And then Allah Azza wa Jalla, he goes on to say, whatever they meanly withhold. So over here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, سَيُطَوِّقُونَ مَا بَخِلُوا بِهِ. That these individuals, that this will be hung around their necks because they held it meanly, right? They held it with the stinginess. Will it be like a noose? Yeah. It could be either or, right? So this idea of a noose, right? This idea of a noose being tied around someone, like, outside, like, even if we include the American contextual cultural context, what does a noose signify? A noose is rope that's tied around somebody's neck. Yeah, these people, the money that they don't give, Allah will bring that money on Yawm al-Qiyamah. What is he going to do? He's going to turn it into this rope that is tied around their neck. They weren't giving it for sadaqah. They weren't using it in the right way, right? They were just collecting this money. Mm-hmm. Mm. So people who don't share their knowledge, there's a very specific hadith where the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, "Man katama ilm fayalbisu lijaman min an-nar." So that the one who hides his knowledge, he will be placed in a lijam is like a what are those things, like shackle? Like he'll be placed in shackles that are made out of fire. Yes. Say that again. All right, so am I allowed to give all of my money away? Huh? What do you guys? No, I can't. Right, there are rules for inheritance, and why is that? Why are there rules on how I'm leaving my money? Sure, I agree with all that, but essentially why? Okay, is right, meaning that money technically is not what? It's not mine. Right? So why is this a problem? How come I can't use the money at my death the way that I want to use it? Because it's no longer mine. Like I have no use. If I want to give my money in charity, guess when I can do it? Before you die, right? So if I give all, I've had, subhanAllah, I still don't understand the mentality. I have parents who come to me and be like, hey, can I split my money like this? I want to give all my money to my daughter because of the situation, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay, do it today. I was like, do it today. Why do you want to wait until you die? Do it today. If this is what you want to do, then do it now. Because the moment you die, the money is no longer yours. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has set the taqsim. He's already defined, and this is how the money is to be distributed. You cannot challenge that. And if there's a need, and the thing is, does the Sharia take into account specific situations? It does. It's like, so for example, if an individual has children and one of them is disabled, is it permitted for him to leave more money for the disabled child? Yes, like the Sharia allows for that. So there are certain concessions you have for specific situations, but can I use those specific concessions as a general rule? No, not at all. In general, the moment I die, the money is no longer mine. Right? I can't just use the money however I want to use it. I have to use it in the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has stipulated. Saying that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, again, What this idea of having a noose around the neck, what does that signify? It's a punishment for sure, because when I have a noose around my neck, what is it that I can't do? I can't breathe. And that restriction is a sign for those people that there's a major punishment that is coming. And not just that, why else are people hung? Humiliation, ahsant. Right, so this idea of being punished, this idea of humiliation, because who else is this metaphor used for? Or who else is this representation used for? You guys know? Which figure in the Quran? Which individual? I'm sure all of us know the surah. Think. Ahsant. Right, Abu Lahab. Abu Lahab. She'll be given, why will she be given a noose? Because in her lifetime, what did she used to wear? She used to wear jewelry and adornment as a way of what? Of pride. So what is a noose going to do? It's going to humiliate her. Right? Which makes the surah that much more powerful, like when you understand the context of these things. But this idea of this noose, it's an idea of humiliation. And even within an American context. Right? Why were people hung publicly? Because they were to be humiliated. This idea of fear, right? This idea of restriction. And it's the same thing here. You know, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us and make us generous. Ameen. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He brings it back again, right? So you have the circular, this like, what do you call this? Like the circularity of the Quran, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings the argument back, saying that I've given you this money is actually mine, you will die, you will pass, and what's going to happen to all those things? They will all be returned to me. I am the owner. I am the one who gave them, and eventually all of it will come back to me. And you are just here for a short period of time. You're just an agent. How you're an agent, how you fulfill your responsibilities, these are all the opportunities, and these are all the chances I'm going to give you. And because it's just one chance, you better what? You better do it. You better do it well. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala basically make it successful. I mean. The next verse that Imam Ghazāli he brings, he says, الَّذِينَ يَبْخُلُونَ وَيَأْمُرُونَ النَّاسِ بِالْبُخْلِ وَيَكْتُمُونَ مَا آتَاهُمُ اللَّهُ مِنْ فَضْلِهِ وَأَعْتَدْنَا لِلْكَافِرِينَ عَذَابًا مُهِينًا. That who are miserly in order other people to be the same, hiding the wealth or hiding the bounty that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given them. We have prepared a humiliating torment for such ungrateful people. So over here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's talking about a different type of bakhil. He's talking about a different type of stingy person. What is the difference here? Yes. I'm sorry. Not only are they cheap, but what? Right? They encourage other people to be cheap. Right? They encourage other people to be miserly. They encourage other people not to spend. Right? They discourage them from spending. They discourage them from using their wealth. They discourage them from being good. So not only are these people bad in and of themselves, but they try to influence other people. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us. And again, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's ascribing this wealth to Him. مَا آتَاهُمُ اللَّهُ. He says that the wealth that Allah has given them. The wealth that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed them with. Again, ascribing this wealth back to Him. And that's something that's really important. Meaning that if I've given this to you, you have no right to be what? You have no right to be cheap. You have no right to be miserly. You have no right to be stingy. This is my money. How are you going to be like that? I've just created you as an agent. You have to use it in the way that I have ordained for you. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, we have prepared a humiliating torment for such ungrateful people. وَأَعْتَدْنَا لِلْكَافِرِينَ عَذَابًا مُهِينًا. Right? Like in a humiliating punishment. Why? How come He didn't just say, I'm punishing them? Why add that in? Why describe this punishment? Sure, no, I agree with the emphasis, but why? Why put this emphasis? Because they thought this wealth and holding on to that would give them what? Would give them status and honor. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, oh yeah, you know what this wealth is going to do for you? It's going to what? It's actually going to do the opposite. It's going to humiliate you. May Allah protect us. So over here, there's a series of hadith that Imam Ghazāli mentions, and then he mentions a series of statements, and then we'll talk about that, and there's some certain ideas that I want to engage in that I think are important. But over here, two traits are not combined in a believer: stinginess and bad manners. The Prophet ﷺ used to say, "O Allah, I seek refuge with you from worry and grief, from incapacity and laziness, from cowardice and miserliness, from being heavily in debt, and from being overpowered by others or by other men. Anything stand out here in this hadith? This dua is beautiful. What do you guys think? For being oppressed, right? Not just being oppressed, like, don't put me in a situation where I can be oppressed, right? And a lot of this has to do with this concept, like, subhanAllah, and I love this concept in Islam of empowerment, right? Not only should you not oppress others, but you should also what? Not allow yourself to be in positions where you can be oppressed. So if I am in a situation where I am being oppressed, what do? Move. I leave. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us. And He says that. And He says those people who allow themselves to be oppressed, they're going to be punished. So it's very important for us as individuals. If I have a choice, and again, if I have a choice, because Allah makes an exception for those individuals who don't, but if I have a choice, I am obligated to what? Right, I'm obligated to make a change somehow, some way, right? Whether that be moving, whether that be redefining my boundaries, whether that being verbal, you know what I mean? Or whether it be pushing back, depending on what my ability is. Then he sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, my wife encourages me to make this dua a lot, mostly because of this. But anyway, I heard the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam say, "What is evil in a man are alarming miserliness and unrestrained cowardice." So meaning that he's extremely what? He is extremely cheap, and he's extremely what? Like, he's an extreme coward, right? Like, anytime there's a situation, and what are some situations that you guys feel that maybe you've experienced cowardice? I'm sorry? One at a time, huh? Sure, like what? If anybody wants to share, you can. Like an emergency situation, like what? Okay, you get into an accident, what happens? Did I just move this? No, okay. Sure. And then what? And then wait. So what happened that you felt that there was some cowardice there? All right, right. You don't want to be responsible for the mistake. I'll give another example. Have you ever been in a situation where you're somewhere, and then strangers might come up to you? They might try to intimidate you. They might try to ridicule you, but because you're the one that's being pointed out, what happens to your friends? Right, they back away. They don't necessarily run, right? But they just kind of stand around, or they'll keep going. How does that make us feel? Like, I don't know if you guys. I've been in the situation, but I'm also not a very quiet person. So how does that make you feel, though? Or how do you think I felt? You feel betrayed, right? You feel betrayed. This person's a coward. This person is like, and what? How do you feel about spending time with those people after that? Never again. It's like, yo, you guys are a bunch of punks, man. Like, I don't want to be around such people. Like, fake is like, you only befriend me, or you only spend time with me when it suits you. But when I actually need your friendship, right? And I might not even need it, right? There are situations where you don't need the friendship. You don't need somebody to back you up. Like, you can defend yourself. But just the fact that they did that, what is that, right? You feel betrayed. You definitely feel betrayed, and that's why we should avoid being cowards. And so what are other situations that you guys have dealt with? I have a lot of examples, unfortunately. A situation like dealing with racism in the family. I don't know if you guys ever had this problem. So sometimes from parents, sometimes from uncles, sometimes from grandparents. How many of us actually have the courage to say something? Oh, he's just like that, or you know what I mean? Like, there are certain things that it's tough, right? It's not easy to stand up in those situations. You'd be like, listen, and nobody's saying to be rude, right? No, we should never be rude. That's never the goal. We should never regardless of how disrespectful someone else is, it doesn't give me the right to what? To disrespect others. But it's like, yo, I don't appreciate that. Or another way to deal with it also is like, you know what? Maybe I didn't understand. What did you mean by that? And kind of cornering someone into explaining what it is that they're saying and explaining what it is that they're meaning. And it's not always easy, right? It's not always easy. It's tough, right? It's tough standing up in those situations and actually being courageous, right? But being courageous is important. It's a characteristic that is important for everyone to have. Like, we should always try to be as courageous as we can. And what is the problem with being, how come more people aren't courageous? Right, being afraid. Okay, why? Okay, so like a lot of that has to do with vulnerability, right? So why are we afraid of being vulnerable? Yes. Okay, and maybe it's a spirit, maybe it's a spiritual weakness. All right. Sometimes that has to, like, social pressure, right? That's part of it. What else? Sometimes it can be a primal fear, right? So like here, if I see a lion, right, and I run away, no one's gonna be like, "Oh, look at this guy! Look at this punk!" Right? In some situations that it's not courage, right? So I think in certain situations there's a fine line between like courage and stupidity, right? It's like, what do you mean you're not willing to jump 8 floors? You know, it's a, that's not courage. You know what I mean? Like, that's not a courage. That's not an issue. That's not courage. It has nothing to do with courage. But courage has to do with like standing up in the face of oppression, right? That's where courage actually shows. There's no oppression going on forcing me to jump across the building, right? Unless the bad guy's chasing me, that's not courage. That's fear, right? You're running away. Yeah. No, it's like standing up against society. But the thing, why? Why is that? Why is that a problem? Why? So I think it's important to explore this. So I'm lacking confidence to say no. Why? I'm sorry? You're afraid to say, okay, you're saying, you're representing the same idea, but my question, why? Why am I afraid to stand up? Why am I afraid to show my character? Why am I afraid to say no? So is the problem the opposite? The problem is the opposition, sure. What do I actually fear? I'm afraid of something. I'm afraid of the social disapproval, sure. I'm afraid of losing that, right? I'm afraid of losing social acceptance. Yeah. Support. Well, sometimes it could be wealth. Sometimes it could be it could be a million things, right? Do people sometimes say things that cost them their jobs? Yes, right? People say things that'll cost them their livelihood, their jobs. If someone is preserving that, I don't think it's praiseworthy, but I also don't always think it's fully blameworthy. It's easy for us to say, "Oh, well, why did he say that, or why did he do that?" But how many of us, like for me, it's like, "Oh, I would never want to be a millionaire." Well, that's easy for me to say. Why? Because I'm not a millionaire. Right? If I was in that position, right? If I was in that position, inshallah, right? And I get into that position, and then Jamian, I mean, may Allah bless all of you for just for being here. So like, we're in that position, and then I turned it down. It's like saying, "Oh, I would never go to Harvard." Oh, bro, like they would never accept you. You know what I mean? Like but the thing is, if I got an acceptance letter from Harvard and I turned it down, now I'm in a position to do what? Right now I'm in a position to be like, no, like I don't want to go to Harvard. Well, I can say that because I was accepted. But if I was never in that position, like, who am I to start criticizing others? It becomes very challenging, right? So this idea of courage, it's important for us. It's important when we seek support. But when it comes to others, individuals' decisions, we shouldn't be in a position where we judge others. The number of pressures that each one of us faces and the number of problems that each one of us faces, it's difficult for anyone else to actually quantify that and qualify that. Like, I don't know what everybody in this room is going through. I just don't. You know, subhanAllah, man, like I remember Saif, he used to do this like every once in a while. He'd be like, "Hey, turn to the person next to you and ask them what dua they would like to make for you." And like, I found out people have had cancer. I found out people who've like lost kids. I found out people who are like, they're going through their own personal issues. People have gone bankrupt. Like, we just don't know. Like, we really don't. Like, we don't understand the troubles and the trials and the tribulations that each one of us faces every single day. It's like, I just got out of jail because I was jailed unjustly for like 20 years. like it's crazy. Like, and subhanAllah, huh? Yes. Yeah, but I mean, this is Dar Hijra, bro. Come on. So like there are there are a lot of things that every single person faces, and we are not in a position where we should judge people for that. The only time that that will come into play, and even that, like the people who didn't support me and my friends who didn't support me, I'm not judging them. I'm judging what? I'm judging their reaction. And I was like, okay, well, if that's the case, I don't want to be around people who react like that, because I need to be around people who are supportive and who are positive. And if you're not going to support me and be positive, I don't need that kind of energy in my life. And you know the amazing thing about friendship? Friendship's a choice. And it's kind of sad. It's kind of sad in the sense that the Prophet ﷺ, he says which relationship is most important. Right? That's first and foremost, for sure. And amongst people, with family, firstly, who? With your mother, with your father. Then, who else? Spousal relations, very important. Children, right? These relationships are really important. What's kind of sad is that all of these relationships usually, in light of friendship, where do they go? Right? It's at the end. Even though spiritually it should be at the top. And how easy is it for us to say no to our mother or to our father or to our kids sometimes, you know what I mean, or to our spouses. And then if you're put in a similar situation with your friends, it's like, hey man, we're going biking this weekend. And you're just like, you know what I mean? It's like, oh, do you want to, hey, we're going out to eat. And your wife just asked you to go out to eat. Like we really need to learn how to reprioritize. And that also involves courage, because I have to say no to my friends. It's that same fear though. Right? It's that same fear of social acceptance. Yeah. I'm sorry? Alhamdulillah, we should all try to be as balanced as possible. Glad tidings of paradise, to which the Messenger of Allah ﷺ said, you do not know. Perhaps he spoke of what did not concern him, or he was greedy with that which did not decrease him. Yeah, may Allah protect us. Generosity is proximity or nearness to Allah, nearness to paradise, nearness to the people, and far from the fire. Stinginess is far from the fire, far from paradise, far from the people, and close to the fire. The ignorant, generous person is more beloved to Allah than the worshipping, stingy person. And there's actually another narration that we'll get into that actually mentions why. The Messenger of Allah ﷺ said, the dust in the cause of Allah and the smoke of hell will never be combined in the lungs of a slave, and the stinginess in faith can never be combined in a slave's heart. Two traits are not combined in a believer, stinginess and bad manners. So there's a whole bunch of different narrations, but I think there's one that I want to focus on, and then I want to open up the floor for discussion. Imam Shafi'i, he said, I don't know who's deeper in the hellfire, the miserly or the liar, like the bakhil or the kadhab. There's a story with the shaitan. Where is it, man? Here. This is the last one. So Yahya ibn Zakariya, alayhi salam, the prophet, he met Iblis and said, Iblis, tell me about the most beloved and most hated person to you. He said, the most beloved to me is the stingy believer, and the most hated to me is the generous sinner. So Yahya, he said, why is that? He said, because it is enough for the stingy to be stingy versus the generous, of who I fear that Allah will accept his generosity and cause his heart to turn. He then turned away, the shaitan, he turned away, he said, had you not been Yahya, I wouldn't have told you. Right? Had you not been a prophet, I wouldn't even have told you, I wouldn't even have entertained you. So, I wanted to talk a little bit about consumption. I wanted to talk a little bit about miserliness. I wanted to talk a little bit about generosity. So we live in a society that is very consumer driven, right? Like we're encouraged to consume more. How many of you feel that in order for a house to, or home to function, is it time for Adhan? Look. Okay, we got 5 minutes. Okay, good. We have enough time. So we live in a time where consumerism is heavy, right? We're actually encouraged to purchase a lot and spend a lot. And when we spend on things that we don't need, this is in essence a type of miserliness, because that money essentially is going where? It's coming back to me, right? When I buy a car, who's using the car? Me. If I'm buying a washing machine, I'm using it, right? If I'm buying a house, I'm using all of these things. So the money's not really going anywhere. So because of this understanding that we live in a society where there's this consumerism, how many of you think that families can only survive on two incomes? I'm curious. How many of you believe a family can survive on one income? Huh? I have four. uh, sure. No. So I said survive, right? Thriving is very different. Thriving is very different. So even in this society, right? Even in this society, all of you agree that it's possible to survive on one salary. Will it be easy? No, it won't. I think it'll be very challenging. I think some people are they manage their wealth better than others, right? I think there are people who are definitely good with that. I think people who have that inclination. I think there are people who invest well, and they're kind of able to do more with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given them. And I think there are some people who are just really bad with their money. So who should be responsible? If there's supposed to be one income, who is responsible in the family unit? Huh? The father or the husband, right? The financial responsibility falls on them. I've had people tell me, and I have yet to believe this, where they say and they claim that women they're not willing to put homemaking as a priority. Do you feel that? How many of you feel that's true? I feel I think there's some. I don't think they're all, honestly. Does homemaking as a priority, does that mean that a woman won't work? I'm just curious. What do you guys? How do you guys envision that? Okay, so it's interesting. They can work from home. Huh? I'm sorry? Okay, prioritizing family, prioritizing homemaking. Huh? It could be part-time, right? I think there's different ways that can manifest. So I have yet to perform a marriage where a couple comes in and both are working, and I say to the woman, I say, okay, hey, listen, rely on his income. You know who usually has a problem with that? The guy. The guy usually has a problem with that. Most females, again, from the ones that I've married, they haven't had a problem with that. I said, nobody's saying to stop working, right? Continue working. That's not an issue. I don't even see a problem with that. But the ability to walk away from that job at any point is very powerful. It's very powerful. The only problem with this setup is that she now has to live according to his income. This is the only downside. Why do most marriages break? Do you guys know? It's finances. It's actually finances that cause marriages to break. Even they did a study here in the United States. They did another one, I think, like in Norway. Basically, if both husband and wife are working, if women lost their job, it had no effect on divorce rates. Or it was nominal. And when men lost their job, divorces went up like 50%. So even as a society as progressive as the United States, there's still an understood reliance of what? Like the man being the major financial provider to the household. And again, the reason I mention this is like our understanding of consumerism, what does that actually mean? And what are sacrifices that I have to make? Do I need to have the newest phone? Do I need to have the newest iPhone or the newest Galaxy? No. Do I need to have the newest car? Do I need to have the biggest house? Right? So even for us, some of us might be first generation immigrants. Where we are now in life and how much we earn now in life, would you say that most of first generation are earning more than their parents were at the same stage in their lives? How many would you agree with that? I definitely agree with that. But the way No, I'm saying, but the way that they lived, it's like, do you remember them living in the same way that we live now? No. And the other aspect to this is like we have a lot more, like, even though there's more consumerism, the price of products in general is it's cheaper. How much was a TV in the 80s versus today? Many products. Sure. It's like, so that increases demand of all those things. The other point that I think is important to talk about is quality of life. So now the quality of life of our parents versus the quality of life today, even if we look in terms of standards, in terms of services that are available, it's far different. I mean, how many of you have ordered a DoorDash within the past month? How many of you have had like groceries delivered to their house, right? You know, there's so many things that, and I'm not saying this because it's bad. Like, you know, keep taking advantage of those things. I think these are important services, and they're there, and you know, and for those people who are purchasing, obviously they're affordable for them. But the other problem that we've encountered now is because of this increased consumerism, where it's always difficult to scale back. So at the beginning of the marriage, I always advise everyone, like, and this happened with me too, start at the bottom. Right? Because climbing up the economic ladder is what? It's like super easy, right? Is it harder to move into a bigger apartment? Is it harder to drive a nicer car? Is it harder to have a nicer phone? But when that phone gets taken away, like, right? Right? It's easier to upgrade than it is to downgrade, right? Yeah, it's a human thing, right? Nobody wants to. And the thing is, why does the marriage break because of finances? It's because of that. It's because of the change in lifestyle. So if we set our expectations as low as possible, it's really easy to grow from that point. And then not just that, you grow together as a family. You learn to scale back. You learn to, be economic in your decisions. You learn finances. You learn these things together. And I think that's a very important growing opportunity. And if there comes a time, like, it'll change your shopping habits. It'll change your outlook. It'll change so many things. So I think that's something that's really important. But I just thought it was something that we could discuss and spend a little bit of time on. It's time for Salah. I'll see all of you, inshallah, next week. Wallahu a'lam wa sallallahu ala khayri khalqin. Nabiyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sallam. Yeah. Sure. Sure. So, okay, so why do we take advantage of them? So remember we were talking about why do we make decisions? It's because society pushes us to make those decisions. And what does it require to push back against society? Courage. Right. Yeah, may Allah make us all brave. Like it's tough, you know. Everybody has nice phones. My son, he lost his phone, so I bought him a new phone, and I bought him a brick phone, like you know those old Nokias. He doesn't even take it to school, right? Right? You know what I mean? Like he doesn't even take it to school. Why? Huh? Well, I mean it is a bit. Yeah, it might have been a little harsh, but like, so the thing is like my daughter, she has less of an issue. Like she has no problem taking it, but like my elder son, like no, he won't take it. He's like for him, he's like I'd rather not have a phone. Right? It's easier to explain that I don't have a phone than than this is my phone. But I mean, yeah, no, but it requires courage, right? So it requires character, it requires courage. Like, no, what you guys are demanding from me is not right, right? Or it's outside of my ability. I'm not going to fall into social pressure just for that. Like, if I don't need a better laptop, then if I can't justify, like, if I can't come up with 3 points in justifying a purchase, then I won't make it. Yeah, 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 yeah. You know, because we're starting at a higher point in the ladder, and we don't understand sacrifice. The difference between our parents' generation and us, they understood sacrifice, right? They understood hardship, and like, how many of us have even gone to bed hungry? Like seriously, like we're so comfortable, like we're so comfortable, we're so blessed, like subhanallah in so many ways. Like for us, like the biggest problem is like, is there gas in the car? You know, like that's the biggest thing we have to worry about. Or like, oh, the internet's down. Like, what am I gonna do? Like, you know, like you know what I mean? Like, read? Get out of here, bro. Like, where's the audiobooks? So like, I need someone to read for me. No, I mean, we're spoiled, you know, and the problem with being spoiled is like being spoiled does not build character. Adversity does. And until we learn how to face adversity, none of our character is going to be built. Which is why, like, I feel for new couples, this is your opportunity. Like face a little bit of adversity. Like start at the bottom. Like really learn how to grow. Learn how to deal with small spaces. Learn how to like, you know, what I mean, manage your finances. Like stuff's important. Yes. No, they did. They sure. Yeah. I mean, it was a little bit different. So the thing is, who here, and I don't mean to say this in a negative way. Who are our parents competing against? They're competing with the people who are still back in their home countries, and that's like that's like easy competition, right? There's not much that's to compare. Because and how do I know that? I've heard from many of that generation who've gone back and visited. What is the first thing that like? What do they do? Do they ever go empty-handed? No, they're expected to have gifts for every single person. Why? Because they made it. They got money like that. So their level of competition is different versus us. Our competition is like, you know, we're all in the same place now. Nobody cares to compete back with what's going on in like Kenya or Somalia or Nigeria or Pakistan or Egypt. Like many of us aren't even connected to any of those places. Like those are just faraway places for us, and you know, we just remember like sucky summer trips that we used to take. You know, but that's it. Like that's our mental association. Like over here, it's like we're actually looking at the local neighborhoods. We're actually looking at the school. Like these are things like our perception is completely different. Yeah, social media, it gives more exposure for sure. Yeah. Okay. You get access to information that it's a double-edged sword, right? You get access to things you didn't know. Like I've learned so many life hacks. You know, like yeah. No, صح. Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. Like no, and there's a whole paradigm shift too. Like how many of your parents have used dishwashers to dry the dishes? Like it's not even used to like wash them. Like they would wash the dishes, they would wash the dishes, and then they would put them in the dishwasher. And I'm like, this is to wash the dishes. Like it's not meant to dry them. But and Allah give us tawfiq, and may Allah bless our parents. I mean,
أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
استووا اعتدلوا تراصوا رحمكم الله. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. والنازعات غرقا والناشطات نشطا والسابحات سبحا فالسابقات سبقا فالمدبرات أمرا يوم ترجف الراجفة تتبع